the picture to be clearer. You gotta be able to paint it just look at the sky. So you gotta be able to throw it just like a lie. So you gotta be able to be the one that everybody wanna see. You gotta be able to be the one that's on the G. You gotta know what I'm talking about. When I spit it like this, you know what comes out my mouth.
Alright, that was an old little freestyle that I did back in the day, you know, maybe about 2 years ago. I was still drinking. But we want to say thank you to the one, to the source, to the all, Big Mama Mama, Hashem, Universal Creator, you know, all the other messengers, everybody that came back to this planet to try to help other people out, the ones that do it from the top of their heart, that don't have any ulterior motive, that just really have a hunger in their gut to help people. We want to thank all those people like that, the ones that inspire me, especially Rabbi Nine Son, Dr. Yafa Bey, Taj Tariq Bey, Noble Drew Ali. You know, you had Yahshua, Krishna, Muhammad, a lot of other different people. All right, so the name of this one is Watch with Your Ears. So we're going to take it all the way back to nature on this one. You see, you're looking at the beautiful sky and the trees and the wind blowing. I'm in the backyard. And I got a couple of books that I want to do out of the book of books. But I want to do a little song that I wrote. I wrote this song about a year ago. It's not to anybody in particular. But I hear people singing these little songs about these strippers. And they glorifying that stripper life. I don't got nothing against strippers, you know. You do what you do, you get your money. I ain't no hater. But I got my own little song that I wrote, you know, my own personal experience that I wrote about a year ago. You know, it's my little personal experience from strippers. Goes like this. You see me? I just been making my money and stacking my dead. Just if it's some drama, then come with the llama, you know that I'm coming to get it. But you just a stripper to drop it the pants, never to give it the family a chance. You just been sipping and flipping and tricking. You just been sucking and cutting and dipping. You was in jail and I drove to go get you. Now I'm in jail, I ain't heard shit with you. Now it's our babies that's needing you bad. How could you be so freaking sad? We been so happy till paper just changed you. I gave you some love and then gave you some game too. You started stripping, that bitch just shamed you. Our daughter got raped, and yes I do blame you. You chased the money, then gave up your soul. How could you be so freaking cold? That's just a little something, you know what I mean? It's, you know, just a little something for that stripper life that y'all love to glorify. Alright, now we're gonna jump into this book of books, reading straight from the book of books. Hadn't did this in a while. We got Book for Thy Moor King Parable. Now, so this is an ancient story, you know. This story may sound similar to somebody else that you can relate to or something, because there's nothing new under the sun. This is a story that's already been told before, and I'm just retelling it again. And you have to look inside the duality of it when you think of the word Marianne, which Marianne is just Nahrum, which Nahrum is just Berber dialect for king. So, Book for Thy Moor King Parable. In a land far, far, far away from here, and a long, long ago lost in duality, there lived a modest Moor king named Marianne. Now this Moor king knew not who or what he was. This Moor king was born with a silver spoon in his mouth and treated as royalty and spoiled beyond belief. As a child, everything Marianne asked for was given to him. He had only to form the words in his mouth, and it was there granted. This Moor king was so lovable, so precious, and so filled with joy that one day an evil one took notice of him. Now mind you, this Moor king was but a babe, a pup, who knew not who or what he was. So the evil one, knowing full well who Marianne would and could grow to be, set out to destroy the innocence of this pup at a very young age. So the evil one bestowed an evil spirit on one of the Moor king's nursemaids that led her to steal his innocence at the tender age of 4. This is only but a parable, not an odyssey, so we spin forward in time. Now this Moor king, who still knows not who or what he is no longer a pup, but a young raging lion. This Moor king now drinks beer for breakfast, fist fights for sport, and spends his ill-gotten funds on harlots and drugs. By the time Marianne was 19 years of age, he had so much bad karma on him that his once beloved royal family wished death upon him. His own grandmother said, "Son, you will be dead before you are 21 if you don't get out of the streets." So finally, at the appointed time, the clouds of the sky formed into a giant hand, and this giant hand touched Marianne with the tip of a finger right on his heart. The young Moor King instantly fell to his knees and began to fight for his life. He felt as if his whole body was on fire and an elephant was sitting on his chest. The same time, a rhino was trying to stomp him out like a campfire. When they got Marianne to the hospital, he died. The doctors put the paddles on him and shocked him back to life. Then Marianne died again. The third time they put the paddles on him, the Spirit of the Most High filled his lungs and allowed him to come back to this realm. Even though this Moor King was alive, he was dead in a sense. This Moor King was dead in this world and remained in a coma for 3 days. On the third day he rose. He literally had no idea where he was and began to panic. He had all these tubes, wires, and machines hooked up to him. To this day, it is still unknown to Marianne if he brought an evil spirit back with him from the land of the dead, or if he had this spirit in him all along. This spirit wanted to be let out and began to force its way up from his gut and into his chest. The Moor King began to cough violently and uncontrollably. Finally, Marianne coughed his spirit up into his mouth, and it instantly flew out of his mouth and right into a nurse's mouth who was 10 feet away. The spirit, this mucus, flew out of his mouth and went straight, then made a left turn in midair and went into his nurse's mouth. Disgusting. Yes. Dr. Fogel was the surgeon credited with saving Marianne's life, and he came in later that night to talk to him. He told Marianne that he was never going to walk again, and that he removed one of his organs and put permanent staples in his stomach. The Moor King's reply to this was, "Yes, I will walk again. Get me a walker." So Marianne began to use the walker and drag his feet behind him until the Elohim granted him use of his legs. As time went by, Marianne began to heal, and the restless spirit of the raging lion began to subside to a kinder, more gentler spirit. The Moor King got married, had seeds, but still did not know who or what he was. So the spirit of the raging lion found its way back into his heart again, and thus led him back into the slums. The Moor King began to self-loathe and became unable to love anyone else, for he hated himself. The Moor King's queen left him and took their seeds with her. This led Marianne on a journey to find himself. Exactly 8 years and 2 seeds later, this Moor King began to find himself and set out to reunite his pride. He knew that he had treated his queen very badly, but she was no angel either. He figured it's been 8 years and time heals all wounds. Even though Marianne had 4 of his daughters, he still had a son and another daughter who was not with him. So Marianne talked with his estranged queen and explained to her how he had found his calling in life. He explained how he didn't believe in Jesus anymore and called on Allah. He also explained how he stopped eating the flesh of animals. All this seemed to be okay with his former queen, so he invited her to come live with him and his daughters in his quaint and modest castle. His estranged queen was homeless and had no chariot of her own. This troubled the Moor King, for he felt she only came out of need and not the reunification of their royal pride. So against his own will, he still decided to make one last fleeting effort to right the wrongs he had done. After a month, it was clear that his estranged queen harbored too much hatred and resentment in her heart to ever forgive him of his past transgressions. From almost a decade ago. She did not want to adhere to the ways of a clean Moor and live by the standards that were already set in place. The Moor King spent 8 hard years building his castle and attaining health and wealth. His estranged queen had let her hate consume her. She had a black heart and wished to overthrow Marianne and take all he had worked for. It took all he had. The Moor King spent 8 years struggling to finally get to know himself It took the evil of Lav just 10 short months to take all he had. The evil spirits infected the Moor King's seeds and turned them too against Marianne. It all came to a head one ill-begotten night. The Moor King was attacked by his own royal pride. They literally were engulfed by evil spirits and tried to kill Marianne. He was beaten so badly that he was sent to the hospital. The Moor King was very strong and could have fought off his pride, but alas, the Moor King suffered from a broken heart and just absorbed the beating. He lost consciousness and basically woke up in the hospital. To his dismay, he woke up to a horrid sight. His skull was split wide open. His nose was broken. His eyes were almost beaten shut. Both his lips were busted in several places, and he had scratches and bruises all over his body. To add injury to insult, the pride said he was the attacker, even though he was the only one injured or hospitalized. After a night in the hospital, Marianne was taken to jail. His seeds from a previous queen were taken from him. His bank account was emptied out. His chariots were taken from him, and he was deemed a trespasser at his own castle. Yet through it all, Marianne was happy in all the events that took place, for he himself had fallen below the high standards he had set for himself before the arrival of Lav. Ancestors bumped him over the head and knocked some royal sense back into him. As the Moor King sat in jail, he began to thank the Most Highs for his lessons and began to finalize his life path. He looked forward to the presence of a future queen more suited for his life goals and the challenges that lie before him. All right. Now we got this one right here is Book for Thy Higher Self. Only when everything of monetary value is taken from you can thou truly focus on thyself spirituality. How then is one able to focus on thine own spirituality if thou is worried about material things? One can't. Manifestation takes place when one's heart is pure or impure. Having an impure heart and manifesting will wreak havoc on one's life. If thou be true and have a heart of gold, thy manifestation will come to fruition in a positive way, even if thou hast to lose everything to gain the only thing. In the end, it is just you and thy journey back to one's higher self. So why then dost thou long for what thou dost not have need for? I did seeketh through my pillars to be back on a high spiritual level. So thou canst be unhappy when one loses one's possessions, but gaineth thine own soul. Thine own spiritual development is thine own. So let us not judge thyself too harshly. Thou must take up the path that brings forth thy reunion with one's higher self. If thou loses thy seeds in this life, maybe it's to gain them in the next. Shalom. All right, we got one more. This one is Book for Thy Wisdom. Old ones rule the world, but young ones make it possible for them to. Make my hand slow to find violence and my wit quick to find answers. Let me not nightmare on the wrong I've done, but dream of the good I am to do. Where do you go if thou art lost? You only can go where you are found. If thou knows where thy home is, how can thee not know when thou is lost? Why doth thee wake in the middle of the night, if not to write, to fight plight? If thou doth dream of an alligator that changes into a flying creature, didn't thou really just dream of a flying creature that took the form of an alligator? When thy life is over, dost thou plan on coming back here? Why then cry over ones whom have left thee? Will thy skills fade and ability diminish, or will thy seeketh inside for thee strength to replenish? Dost thou readeth this book and wonder, who am I? Or is thou simply happy that I am? One cannot judge the heart of a man so easily, nor judge who inspires that man. Thou should be careful when asking the spirits for help. That help could bump thee over the head. When thou closest thine eyes, doth words spring up from the betterment of thy people? Or dost thou have an evil heart filled with lust and envy? Dost thou take credit for every good thing thee has done, or dost thou give credit to the Spirit of the All? When one is given a gift, one must surely use it, lest thy gift turn into thine curse. One cannot have wisdom One cannot have wisdom if one always speaks when others try to talk. Only a fool believes he is smarter than the Most High, and only a child of Diva believes him. When one is hungry, doth thou not eat? So why then when one is lonely, doth thou seek to be alone? If every man knoweth the future, who then would know thy past? How can thou lead thine own children astray, and not be led astray also? Why dost thou always asketh the creators for things that are not of thy creators? Wilt thou also ask a dog to buy thee a new house? How then can thou ask of the Most High to pay thine own bills? If thou dost want not an evil king to rule over thee, why then dost thou cast thy balance? Stay far away from one who never has laughter, for that soul is sick. Wilt thou sacrifice thine own child just to make something to eat? How then can one sacrifice the babe of another animal just to satisfy thine own hunger? Boscus the warleaf has been created. 5:116. That's Boscus, Boskus. Boscus the warleaf has been created. 5:116. Now you figure that out. 13 love.